Imagine walking into your kitchen tomorrow morning and finding a small booklet on the counter. Inside, a government official has decided exactly how much meat you can eat this week, how many eggs your family is allowed, and just how little sugar you can use. No exceptions, no substitutions at the store, just that booklet, and whatever ingenuity you could scrape together before dinner. That was the reality for millions of American families between 1942 and 1945. And here's where things get personal. These weren't just policies on paper. They were felt at every kitchen table, in every humble pot of soup, in every birthday cake that arrived thin-sliced and without apology. Today we are counting down 30 forgotten wartime rationing recipes that kept America fed when food was scarce. Stay until the end, because what these meals reveal about resilience, resourcefulness, and the quiet dignity of ordinary people might completely change how you see your own kitchen. We begin at number 30 with war cake, a dense, spiced cake made without eggs, butter, or milk. The real genius was in the raisins and molasses, which carried sweetness and moisture where rationed ingredients simply couldn't. Your grandmother knew this without ever reading a recipe card. You baked with what you had, or you didn't bake at all. Post-war abundance eventually made substitute desserts unnecessary, but this humble cake still whispers through modern vegan baking. At number 29 sits mock apple pie, perhaps the most astonishing illusion ever produced in a wartime kitchen. Ritz crackers, soaked in lemon sugar syrup, mimicked the texture of cooked apples so convincingly that children genuinely believed they were eating the real thing. And get this, many of them weren't told the truth until years later. We lost something when fresh fruit became so cheap, we forgot what it meant to go without it. Number 28, cream chipped beef on toast, was known less politely by the soldiers who ate it in mess halls across the Pacific. Dried beef folded into white sauce, ladled over toast, cheap, calorie-dense, and fast. Veterans remember the smell of it with a complicated kind of fondness. Translation: it wasn't beloved, but it kept people going when nothing else would. Oatmeal meatloaf earns number 27. Families stretched their small meat rations by bulking up the loaf with oats instead of breadcrumbs. The real genius was that nobody at the table needed to know. It looked like dinner. It smelled like dinner. And by 1943, that was enough. Budget cooks still use this trick today, though few know where it came from. At number 26, bean loaf took the place of meat entirely. Mashed beans, baked with spices into a modest loaf, delivered protein without a single ration point spent on flesh. Families adjusted their expectations with quiet dignity. A full belly mattered more than a familiar flavor. This forgotten recipe now mirrors the plant-based movement perfectly, though today's versions come dressed in restaurant lighting rather than wartime necessity. Number 25 might be the strangest entry on this entire list. Peanut butter stuffed onions. Baked whole onions filled with peanut butter as a meat alternative. Practical, protein-rich, and admittedly unloved. Nobody pretended it was delicious. But here's where it gets truly poignant. People ate it anyway, without complaint, because sacrifice had become its own kind of language in those years. Carrot pudding comes in at number 24, a dessert that used the natural sweetness of grated carrots in place of rationed sugar. Children were told it was just like cake. Most of them nodded and believed it, or pretended to. That small act of parental reassurance, repeated in millions of kitchens across America, echoes all the way into the carrot cake sitting on bakery shelves today. Number 23 brings us boiled dressing, a cooked condiment made from flour, vinegar, and water, a workable substitute for egg-based mayonnaise. It appeared at church picnics and family gatherings, quietly filling the bowl where the real thing couldn't. Your great-grandfather knew this without a second thought. Resourcefulness wasn't a personality trait back then. It was just Tuesday. Eggless pancakes land at number 22. Baking soda and buttermilk replaced the eggs, and the stack still arrived at the breakfast table warm and golden. Weekend. Morning still felt like a small celebration. We lost something when eggs became so cheap that we stopped marveling at a stack of pancakes. Number 21 is cornmeal mush, a thick porridge eaten for breakfast, then sliced cold and fried the next morning in whatever fat the family had saved. Translation: one bag of cornmeal became 2 meals without any waste at all. Today it's been rebranded as polenta and sold at a premium. In 1943, calculating how to make a single pound of ground beef feed 5 children, and a husband working double shifts. They asked not, what do I want to eat, but how do I make this enough? That question is almost lost now, and get this, we gave it up willingly, the moment the shelves filled back up. Could you feed your family for a week under wartime ration limits? Drop your answer in the comments, and if this kind of forgotten ingenuity speaks to you, hit like, and let's keep going. Number 20 is Victory Garden vegetable soup. Thick, honest, and made entirely from vegetables grown in the backyard. 60% of American families maintained a Victory Garden by 1943. Dinner was something you'd weeded that morning and harvested that afternoon. The clatter of fresh vegetables hitting the pot was the sound of self-reliance. At number 19, dandelion salad brought the yard directly to the table. Children were sent outside to gather greens, an errand that doubled as foraging and felt like adventure. Free, nutritious, and widely available, dandelion greens required nothing but knowing where to look. That knowledge has nearly vanished from American life. Sugarless applesauce cake arrives at number 18, its sweetness borrowed entirely from fruit instead of the sugar bowl. It still felt like a treat. That distinction matters. Your grandmother knew this without needing a nutritionist to explain it. Joy didn't require abundance. It required effort and intention. Number 17 brings chocolate victory cake. Made with cocoa powder, actual chocolate bars were restricted. The smell of it baking still meant something more was coming. Morale is a word we use for armies, but here's where it gets truly nostalgic. It applied just as much to a kitchen on a Tuesday evening in Ohio as it did to any battlefield. Mock duck comes in at number 16, ground meat shaped, seasoned, and baked to suggest a roast that the family simply couldn't afford. Sunday dinner, reinvented through sheer determination. The table was set the same way. The candles were lit. The pretense of normalcy was its own form of courage. Potato donuts earned number 15. Mashed potatoes stretched the flour and sugar, adding moisture and bulk to something that still arrived warm and sugared. Kids didn't mind at all. An indulgence is still an indulgence when someone made it with their hands. Numbers 14 through 1 move quickly. Vinegar pie, bread pudding, cabbage and noodles, spam and potato hash, hot milk cake, rice pudding, liver and onions, tomato soup stretchers, molasses cookies, fish cakes, navy bean soup, fried cornmeal slices, grain coffee substitutes, and finally, back to mock apple pie in the top spot. Because no single recipe better captures the spirit of these years than a dessert made of crackers that tasted like something it never was. Nothing on this list was wasted. Not a peel, not a stale heel of bread, not a cup of yesterday's cornmeal. Everything had a second life, because waste wasn't just careless in those years, it was unthinkable. It felt like a betrayal of the effort it took to put food on the table at all. Here's where things get personal one last time. These recipes weren't created by chefs. They were created by ordinary people under extraordinary pressure, parents who needed to look their children in the eye across a dinner table and say, without lying, we are going to be all right. And somehow, through ingenuity and resilience and the quiet dignity of making do, they were. We lost something when convenience became the only thing we valued in a kitchen. We lost the knowledge that resourcefulness is a skill, one that can be taught and one that can be forgotten. Maybe the question isn't whether you'd enjoy these recipes today. Maybe the question is whether you could rely on them if you had to. If you want more stories like this, hidden history, forgotten resilience, the echoes of simpler times, subscribe to Lost American Memories. These stories still have something left to teach us.